Under the dazzling lights of a luxurious hotel in Hampton Beach, New Hampshire, the Economic Conference Auditorium buzzes with the whispers of the audience, business people, journalists and politicians gathered to hear about the state's economic future. The atmosphere carries a polarized political tone, where supporters of the Trump administration clash with liberal voices. Karoline Leavitt, the youngest White House press secretary in history, at 27 steps onto the podium with a confident smile. Her role representing Trump's policies draws every eye, some friendly, some scrutinizing. In the fourth row, Nicholas Riccio, her husband, a reserved 59-year-old real estate entrepreneur, sits quietly, unaccustomed to crowds he's here today to support. His wife. His gaze a mix of worry and pride as Leavitt begins to speak. No one expects this event will soon become the center of attention. Not for policy, but for an unexpected moment. Riccio. The quiet man will stand up and respond in a way that silences, the room turning the conference into a story that spreads across social media before diving into the story comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories in the auditorium. Hundreds of velvet, upholstered seats are filled with attendees, from sharply dressed business people to journalists with recorders at the ready. Murmurs ripple through caring anticipation and skepticism. This economic conference, promoted as a chance to discuss New Hampshire's future, is in truth a political stage with all eyes on Karoline Leavitt. She stands backstage, adjusting her microphone hands, slightly trembling, but her face holding a professional smile. Nicholas Riccio, seated in the crowd, feels the tension. A reserved husband, Riccio, always supports Leavitt from behind the scenes, despite their age gap, stirring past gossip. Riccio, with the steadiness of someone who rose from poverty, is Leavitt's rock amid media and political pressure, dressed in a simple blue shirt. He tries to blend in, but his mind is on his wife. Years of building a real estate career from nothing taught him to spot hostility, and the glances from a nearby group, especially James Whittaker, unnerve him. Whittaker, with a smug smile, whispers something to a companion, prompting laughter. Riccio clenches his fist, trying to focus on the stage where the host introduces Karoline. She steps out elegant in a grey suit, blonde hair gleaming under the lights. Applause erupts, uneven, some enthusiastic, some polite, with a few chuckles from Whittaker's direction. Liv takes a deep breath, her eyes scanning the room, briefly resting on Riccio. He nods slightly as if to say, "You've got this." She begins her speech, voice clear and confident. "Ladies and gentlemen, Leavitt opens. New Hampshire is the heart of hard work, and President Trump's administration is committed to bringing opportunity to everyone." Here she details the economic plan, tax cuts for small businesses, real estate investment, incentives and job support programs. She stresses the importance of empowering people, not government, a familiar Trump slogan that earns applause from some, but raised eyebrows from others. Riccio listens, proud but anxious. He senses Leavitt's carefully prepared speech is fueling division. A group near Whittaker starts whispering, one shaking their head. Riccio glances at Whittaker, seeing him jot something on his phone, a smirk. Undisguised, he knows Leavitt feels the hostility. Her shoulders tense slightly, but her voice remains steady. Leavitt continues, citing an example at Hampton Beach. "We've seen growth thanks to policies encouraging private investment. New resorts, restaurants and apartments are creating jobs and attracting tourism." She smiles, trying to connect with the audience. "This isn't just data, it's the story of families building futures right here." Some nod, but Whittaker's mocking laugh rings out louder this time. Riccio grits his teeth, anger rising, but he reminds himself to stay calm. For Leavitt, she concludes with a call for unity. "Let's build a prosperous New Hampshire, where everyone has opportunity." Applause follows, stronger than before, but laced with jeering whistles. Leavitt bows her head and thanks her eyes, flicking to Riccio for comfort. He offers an encouraging smile, but his heart races as the host introduces the next speaker, James Whittaker. Whittaker takes the stage, confident in a deep blue suit, hair neatly styled. He shakes the host's hand, his smile bright but his eyes cold as they pass over. Leavitt now backstage. Riccio senses a shift, like a storm approaching. Whittaker grips the microphone, scanning the room, and begins. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to be here," he says, his voice smooth but tinged with sarcasm. Leavitt backstage clasps her hands tightly, maintaining a calm exterior. She's used to criticism, but Whittaker's gaze unsettles her. She glances at Rachio, seeing him sit upright, eyes fixed on the stage. She tells herself to stay strong, but deep down she hopes nothing worse is coming. The room, now silent, awaits Whittaker's move. Whittaker starts, his voice slick but loaded. "New Hampshire is a gem," he says, gesturing as if embracing the room. "We're proud of innovation, community, and progress." He emphasizes progress, signaling his liberal stance. Whittaker, a green tech entrepreneur from Boston, is known not just for his renewable energy company, but for ex-posts criticizing Trump's administration. He's called Trump's economic policies a disaster for social equity, a liberal stance that draws thousands of followers today. He's here to target Leavitt, whom he sees as embodying what he opposes, a conservative administration. He believes contradicts fairness and sustainability. But Whittaker continues, his tone dropping as if revealing a painful truth: we must face reality. He pauses, looking directly at the audience, his gaze briefly on Leavitt backstage. "We just heard from Karoline Leavitt, White House press secretary, representing what's it called? An outdated conservative vision." Chuckles rise from a group near him, seemingly aligned with his liberal views. Riccio clenches his jaw, anger swelling. He looks at Leavitt, seeing her stand motionless, shoulders, rigid eyes masking hurt. She's used to criticism, but before hundreds, these words sting like an arrow. Whittaker, sensing support, grows bolder. He paces the stage, microphone close, his tone now dripping with mockery. "Miss Leavitt talks of tax cuts and investment," he says. "But let's be honest, those are just platitudes from an inexperienced mouthpiece chosen to parrot Trump slogans." Laughter erupts, loud and sharp, rippling through the room. Riccio feels heat rush to his face. He knows Leavitt has worked tirelessly to prove herself, and hearing her called inexperienced publicly infuriates him. Leavitt, backstage, feels her face burn, but maintains composure, her hands clasped, pale. He doesn't stop. Whittaker turns, facing the audience, smirking. "I'm a liberal," he declares proudly. "I believe in social justice, sustainable environments, and an economy that doesn't just serve the wealthy, something Miss Leavitt's administration seems to adore." This earns applause from his supporters who share his progressive views. He raises a hand as if listing evidence. "Look at her record. A failed House campaign, leaving hundreds of thousands in debt, which per reports remains unresolved." He pauses, letting the words sink in. Whistles sound, and journalists scribble frantically. Riccio feels his chest tighten. He knows Leavitt's campaign debt is complex, exaggerated by media, but hearing it weaponized is unbearable. Riccio shakes his head slightly, his eyes never leaving. "Whittaker, discuss ideas you didn't. Talk about tax policies. You didn't talk about the investments Karoline proposed. You talked about her age, her campaign, our marriage. That's not ideas, that's personal attack." He pauses, letting the words sink into the audience. A few lower their heads, as if recognizing the unfairness in Whittaker's remarks. Leavitt, backstage, feels her eyes sting. She's used to attacks, but hearing Rio defend her, each word like a shield, fills her with both emotion and pride. Karoline isn't just a press secretary. Riccio continues, his voice now carrying deep feeling. "She's a woman who's worked tirelessly since she was young. At 27, she stands before the nation facing pressure few could handle. She's from Atkinson, a small town right here in New Hampshire, where she learned to get back up after every fall." He turns, looking at the audience as if connecting with them. "Mr. Whittaker calls that inexperienced. I call it strength. The strength of someone who dares to believe in what she does, even when the world judges her." Scattered applause breaks out, growing louder, making Whittaker uneasy. He opens his mouth to speak, but Riccio raises a hand, signaling him to wait. Riccio steps closer to the audience, the lights following, catching the glint of his wedding ring as he absently touches it. "You mentioned her campaign debt," he says, his voice low but sharp. "You made it a joke. But do you know how she fought those allegations? Aren't the full truth she faced them, worked with lawyers, paid back every cent because she believes in honesty." He pauses, staring directly at Whittaker. "Did you ever think to check the truth before judging, or is mocking easier?" Some audience members nod, especially those aware of the controversy around Leavitt's campaign. Whittaker, now still, his smile gone, avoids eye contact. And then Riccio says, his voice tinged with pain, "You mocked our marriage. You joked about age as if love or support can be measured in years." He pauses, his gaze softening but still resolute. "I was homeless. Once, Mr. Whittaker, at 18, I slept in a car, not a penny to my name. People looked at me like a failure, said I'd never amount to anything, but I didn't give up. I worked, I built, and I learned that a person's worth isn't in what others say about them. He turns to the audience, his voice now full of emotion. Karoline's the same. She faces mockery smear articles, but she's still here working for people. That's the woman I love, and no one, not even you, has the right to make her a punchline. The audience starts clapping, this time stronger, some standing moved by Rico's story. Leavitt. Backstage can't hold back a tear, rolls down her cheek, but she smiles, her eyes shining with pride. Rico isn't just defending her, he's defending the values they share, perseverance, honesty, and love beyond prejudice. She wipes the tear, quickly standing taller, feeling stronger than ever. Whittaker, feeling the pressure, decides to push back. He steps forward, gripping the microphone, his voice louder, trying to regain control. Mr. Rio, is it? He says, attempting calm. I respect your personal story. But this is politics. As a liberal, I believe in accountability, Miss Leave. It represents an administration. Many others find harmful Trump's tax cuts favor the wealthy, widening inequality. I question her competence because it's my right, because I want a fairer America. He turns to the audience, trying to rally them. We need leaders with progressive vision, not ones repeating conservative slogans. Leavitt backstage wants to step out and counter, to say she's fought unfair accusations, but she knows that would only fuel Whittaker's glee. She glances at Rachio, seeing his sharp gaze. She shakes her head slightly, signaling calm, but her heart pounds, fearing what's coming. Whittaker, oblivious to Ricchio's tension, pushes further, his tone now blatant, mockery. And then, he says, pausing for dramatic effect, we have Miss Leavitt's personal story, a young, ambitious woman married to a real estate entrepreneur, 32 years her senior. Laughter explodes from one corner, shattering the event's decorum. Whittaker raises a hand, feigning surprise. I mean, that's personal freedom, right? But as a liberal, I wonder, is she in the White House for talent or for knowing the right people? Laughter roars again, louder, sharper. A journalist snaps a photo of Light, capturing her bowed head, hands, clenched eyes glinting with hurt. Ricchio can't take it anymore. Each of Whittaker's words is a dagger, not just at Liv, but at their love and unity. He looks at her, seeing her pained yet resilient gaze. Whittaker, as a liberal, may think he's defending progressive values, but to Ricchio, he's just humiliating his wife. It's the final straw. Ricchio stands slowly but firmly, his eyes locked on Whittaker. Nearby audience members murmur, startled by the quiet man's move. Leavitt backstage startles her, hands loosening her expression, shifting from worry to shock. Mr. Whittaker, Ricchio says, his voice low but clear, cutting through the speech. The room falls deathly silent, all eyes on him. Whittaker pauses, eyebrows raised clearly, unprepared for interruption. He tilts his head, his smile intact but now tinged with irritation. Yes, sir, he says, his tone lightly mocking, as if inviting Rio into a confrontation he expects to win. Journalists swing cameras toward Ricchio, sensing a moment worth capturing. Nicholas Ricchio stands before the stage, the Hampton Beach Auditorium's chandeliers casting light on his tall frame, in a simple blue shirt. The audience, buzzing moments ago at his sudden rise, now sits silent. All eyes on this reserved man, James Whittaker, still holding the microphone. His smile, fading, shows a mix of unease and weariness. He just mocked Karoline Leavitt, turning her into a punchline before hundreds, from calling her inexperienced to joking about their marriage. But he didn't expect Rio, a real estate entrepreneur unaccustomed to the spotlight, to confront him. Leavitt, backstage, feels her heart race. She grips her jacket's edge, her eyes shifting from worry to an indescribable feeling, as if she knows her husband is about to do something. Unforgettable Ricchio has no microphone, but his voice, deep and resonant, cuts through the heavy air. I'm not one for public speaking. He begins, eyes locked on Whittaker. I'm not a politician, not a speaker, I'm just a husband. But today, I can't sit still, while my wife is treated like that. His words, simple yet weighty, leave the audience breathless. Some nod as if connecting with his sincerity. Whittaker crosses his arms, trying to maintain confidence, but his eyes waver, sensing he's losing control. Ricchio steps onto the stage unhurried. Each step Reinforcing his resolve, he stops a few meters from Whittaker, the lights highlighting his face, not blind anger but deep conviction. "Mr. Whittaker," he says, voice steady but sharp. "You call yourself a liberal, championing justice and progress, but what you just did wasn't debate, wasn't progress. It was mockery of my wife, her life. Our family." The word mockery lands like an accusation, sparking whispers. Whittaker shrugs, forcing a strange smile. "Sir, this is a conference. We discuss ideas, question competence." He retorts, his tone tinged with sarcasm, trying to pull the audience back to his side. Rico shakes his head, his gaze unwavering. "You talk of fairness, Mr. Whittaker, but what did you do to promote it? Today you didn't ask Karoline about policy. You offered no data, no solutions. You attacked a person, my wife, my family." He steps closer, his voice now challenging. "If you want fairness, talk about helping small businesses like Karoline did talk about. Creating jobs like she did, but you took the easy way, mocking a young woman because you thought it'd make you look smart." The word smart lands with a hint of irony, startling Whittaker. The audience claps again, this time thunderously drowning out. Lingering murmurs, Whittaker now defensive tries. "Once more, I didn't attack personally," he says, his voice sharper. "I stated facts about her campaign. Her role as a liberal, I believe in free speech, in challenging power. Miss Leavitt is part of that administration, and I have the right to criticize," but his words lack conviction, as if he knows he went too far. Some audience members shake their heads, sensing his weakness. Rico smiles faintly for the first time, not triumphantly, but with the confidence of knowing. He's right, free speech doesn't mean freedom to hurt. He says, "Want to challenge power, do it with ideas, with arguments. Karoline stood here, laid out an economic plan, and you didn't counter a single point. You chose to shame her because you thought it'd make you stand out, but you were wrong." He turns to the audience, his voice softer, but still powerful. "I'm not here to argue politics. I just want to say, treat people like humans, not targets to tear down the audience." Erupts applause, roaring, many standing from business people to journalists touched by Rico's sincerity. Whittaker, now sidelined, lowers his head, microphone down. He forces a weak smile, but his eyes betray defeat. Leavitt can't stay still. She steps out from backstage, the lights catching her grey suit. Nicholas Riccio stands beside Karoline. Leavitt on stage, their hands clasped tightly, their eyes sharing a deep understanding just minutes ago. Riccio, the quiet man, stunned the room with his defense of his wife, against James Whittaker's mockery. Whittaker, now at the stage's edge, head bowed, his strained smile failing to hide his unease. The microphone in his hand hangs low, as if he knows he's lost. Not in a policy debate, but in a moment of honesty and humanity. The audience, from business people to journalists, still stands, clapping, some wiping tears, moved by Ricco's sincerity. The host, a middle-aged woman in a red suit, hurries up, trying to restore the conference's rhythm. "Thank you, Mr. Riccio. Thank you, Miss Leavitt," she says, her voice slightly shaky from the charged atmosphere. "And thank you, Mr. Whittaker, for your perspectives." The word perspectives draws a few chuckles like a gentle jab. She quickly moves to the next speaker, but no one really listens. Journalists in the front row are already sending reports, their phones glowing with draft headlines. "Real estate entrepreneur silences room defending press secretary," and "Unexpected showdown at New Hampshire economic conference. Cameras still track Ricco and Leavitt as they leave the stage, hand in hand, the lights framing them like a couple emerging from a victory without weapons." Backstage, Leavitt hugs Ricco tightly, her head against his chest. "Thank you, Nick," she whispers, her voice choked. "I didn't know you'd do that." Ricco smiles for the first time since stepping on stage, his eyes gentle but resolute. "I couldn't let them hurt you," he says, his hands softly touching her cheek. "Never." They stand there a moment in a quiet corner of the auditorium, the audience's applause still echoing. Affirming the moment just past, Leavitt wipes a tear, her smile returning. "We have to keep going," she says, her voice regaining strength. Ricco nods, squeezing her hand together, he replies. Meanwhile, Whittaker exits through a side door, avoiding curious glances. He mutters to his assistant, a young man in a grey suit. I didn't expect him to do that. Who is he? The assistant shakes his head, checking his phone where ex-posts are already spreading. Whittaker, though trying to stay composed, is visibly shaken. He'd planned his speech as a political jab, bolstering his image as a liberal challenging power. But Riccio's response flipped everything. He sits in a waiting room corner, scrolling notifications, his face darkening at unflattering comments. The auditorium, though now on a new speaker, remains abuzz. An audience member, a middle-aged woman, in a green sweater, recorded Riccio's speech on her phone. She posts the video to X with the caption, "The quiet husband who silenced a conference. This is real respect." The video spreads fast, hitting thousands of views in minutes, then millions in an hour. Comments flood in. Riccio spoke for everyone misjudged, and Whittaker thought he was clever, but he made a huge mistake. But there are dissenting voices. Riccio's just defending Trump through his wife, or Whittaker's right. Leavitt's not qualified. The polarization on X mirrors. America today, a place where one emotional moment can divide or unite. Journalists at the conference seize the moment. A New Hampshire Union Leader reporter files the first story headlined, "Hampton Beach Showdown Entrepreneur Defends Press Secretary Against Liberal Businessman." Major networks like Fox News and CNN jump. In citing the X video, Fox calls Riccio a quiet hero, while CNN focuses on the event's political tension. But both acknowledge the power of Riccio's speech. A CNN commentator even says Whittaker may be right on policy, but he lost on morals. X posts explode with hashtags #Riccio speaks and #Hampton Beach moment trending top in the auditorium. Some attendees start leaving, but Riccio's story dominates. A local businessman in a leather jacket tells his friend, "I don't care who he supports. He spoke truth, and that's rare." A group of journalists corners the host, asking about the organizer's reaction. She just smiles, saying, "We didn't expect the conference to be this lively." But her eyes show respect when mentioning Riccio, as if he reshaped how people view the event. Riccio and Leavitt, after a brief backstage break, return to the auditorium to hear the rest of the conference. They sit in the back, avoiding attention, but eyes follow a few approach to shake Riccio's hand, whispering thanks or praise. "You spoke well," an older man says, voice emotional. Riccio nods, shy under the spotlight. Leavitt holds his hand under the table, her eyes bright. "You made me proud," she says softly. Riccio smiles, his gaze tender. "As long as you're okay, I don't need more." Whittaker, meanwhile, leaves the conference early, declining press. A reporter tries, "What do you think of Mr. Riccio's speech?" Whittaker shakes his head, saying no comment. But in his car, he scrolls X posts, his face showing frustration. A friend texts, "You went too far, Jim." Whittaker doesn't reply, but deep down, he knows he misjudged Riccio, a man who didn't need fame to make the world listen. As the conference ends, Riccio and Leavitt slip out a back door, dodging reporters. They step into the parking lot. Afternoon sun. On their faces, Leavitt leans on Riccio's shoulder, sighing. Today was wild. She says, a hint of laughter. Riccio hugs her, his voice warm. But we got through. They drive home where their son Nico waits. Meanwhile, the X video keeps spreading, turning their story into a phenomenon, not just in New Hampshire, but nationwide. Analyses emerge from local blogs to major outlets, all agreeing. Riccio, with sincerity, made a personal moment, a symbol of something bigger as Hampton Beach. Hotel, lights dim, and attendees leave. The story of Nicholas Riccio and Karoline Leavitt doesn't end in the auditorium. Riccio's stand against Whittaker's mockery transcends. New Hampshire becoming a viral phenomenon, sparking deep debates about respect and treatment in politics. The next day, as Riccio and Leavitt return to their cozy Atkinson home, the event's echo lingers from X posts to TV discussions, shaping how the public sees them. In Whittaker at home, Leavitt sits at the dining table, scrolling her phone, reading conference analysis. A Washington Post piece calls Riccio an ordinary man with extraordinary words, highlighting how he turned a personal attack into a call for respect. A Breitbart article hails him as a hero of family values, though Leavitt frowns, not wanting. Their story politicized. Riccio, playing with Nico on the rug, looks up as she reads an X comment aloud. "Riccio said what I've always wanted to. Don't tear others down to feel better." He smiles faintly, but his eyes are pensive. "I just wanted to protect you," he says softly. "I didn't expect it to go this far." Leavitt sets her phone down, joining him, her hand gently on his shoulder. But you did more, Nick, she says. You made people rethink how they treat each other. And she shares a post from a young woman saying Riccio's story inspired her to face workplace judgment. Riccio nods uneasy with the sudden fame to him. That moment was just what he had to do. Not for glory, but for love of Leavitt. Meanwhile, Whittaker faces his own fallout. He doesn't publicly apologize, but a close source says he messaged Leavitt via an intermediary expressing respect for Riccio and admitting he went too far. The message isn't direct, and Leavitt opts not to respond, focusing on work, over prolonging the feud. Whittaker, a frequent CNN guest, declines event comments, but his silence speaks volumes. An ex-post from a follower reads, Whittaker's great at policy debates, but he lost this time for lacking empathy. Whittaker sees it, but quietly shuts his phone knowing his sharp, liberal image has taken a hit in New Hampshire. Local business people discuss unity, more inspired by Riccio's call to talk ideas, not tear down people. Students at St. Anselm College, where Leavitt studied, hold a debate on respect and political disagreement, citing Hampton Beach as an example. Riccio and Leavitt are invited but decline, wanting privacy. We said what we needed to, Riccio tells Leavitt, and she agrees. Though her eyes shine with pride in her press secretary role, Leavitt faces tougher press questions, but feels more confident. Riccio's act reminds her she's not alone. No matter the pressure, one evening they sit on the couch discussing future challenges. There'll always be Whittaker's, Leavitt says quietly. Riccio takes her hand, his gaze steady, and we'll always get through as long as we have each other. She leans on his shoulder, feeling the safety. Only he brings the Hampton Beach event, though. Just a moment leaves a lasting mark. It doesn't erase political polarization, but it shows a sincere voice can spark good. Even in divided times, Riccio and Leavitt, back to daily life, carry that lesson in their hearts, ready for any storms ahead. Night falls. In Atkinson, New Hampshire, warm golden light spilling from Karoline Leavitt and Nicholas Riccio's home onto the quiet street. Leavitt on the couch smiles at the man of her life. Her heart light after turbulent days, the Hampton Beach event, where Riccio stood up for her against Whittaker's mockery, now feels distant, though it lives on in exhausts and news. But for them, that moment isn't about fame. It's about the unity that carried them through. Leavitt rises, wrapping her arms around Riccio from behind, her cheek against his back. You make me proud every day, Nick, she whispers. Riccio turns, setting Nico on the rug, his eyes gentle but firm. As long as you and Nico are okay, I don't need more, he says. His hand brushing her wedding ring. Their vows, simple. They share a smile, saying more than words could the media storm. The judgments all seem small against the love and support they give each other outside the world. Churns with debates and division. But here, they find peace. Leavitt shuts off her phone, ignoring X notifications, and pulls Riccio to sit with Nico. We're stronger together. And she says, voice certain. Riccio nods, his eyes bright with faith. They hold hands, late sun through the window, lighting their small family a picture of strength and hope. The story of Nicholas Riccio defending Karoline Leavitt at Hampton Beach reflects a deep facet of American life today. Political polarization and how it seeps into personal interactions in today's context, where platforms like X amplify every dispute from Whittaker's mockery to Riccio's heartfelt response. We see a society split by views yet craving respect. Whittaker, as a liberal, represents the trend of personal attacks for political points, targeting Leavitt's age and campaign, instead of debating policy. In contrast, Riccio, a stranger to the stage, chose to defend his wife by sharing his story from homelessness to love beyond prejudice, turning a confrontation into a reminder of humanity. His action and Leavitt's unity as she held his hand show the power of sincerity and love in resolving conflict. The real-world lesson is, in a judgmental world, prioritize empathy and dialogue over attack when facing injustice. Like Riccio refusing to stay silent against Whittaker, you can speak up, but do it with honesty. Like his sharing struggles to connect with the audience instead of letting social media fuel negativity, learn from Riccio's viral video, turning personal stories into inspiration above all. Cherish loved ones like Leavitt and Riccio, driving home to Nico, because that support helps you weather public storms. In polarized America, empathy and sincerity build bridges. Even when disagreements persist, Subscribe to the channel to explore moving stories like Riccio and Leavitt's where sincerity triumphs over disputes. Thanks for watching and see you in the next video with more inspiring moments.